headlines in Nigerian newspapers. I have with me in the studio our in-house analyst, Obani Akinwale, and Dr. Dan Ekere, lecturer from the University of Lagos. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us.
Thank you.
So look at the newspapers this morning. The Daily Trust is saying here, lawmakers fire back at Buhari over 1 trillion naira constituency projects. Push blame to ministers. That's the Daily Trust this morning. Moving now to the Daily Times, it says, P&ID, we're adopting strategies to quash contracts, says federal government. Opens case against Britain Lowland. Court overrules defendant's objection to trial. The News Direct says here, Senate to Executive reposition a nuclear regulatory authority. Urges Ministry of Health to launch a vaccination program against pneumonia. The Blueprint says here, 1 trillion naira wasted on constituency projects. Reps kick, say Buhari misinformed. Ask your ministers, agencies heads. That's according to PDP senators. ICPC's revelation shocking and frightening. That's in the Blueprint this morning. The Nation newspaper says Buhari's order on 1 trillion naira project jolts senators and reps. Constituents demand answer. ICPC's report misleading, says lawmakers. We go to the Daily Sun. Results transmission tops new electoral bill. Also e-voting as lawmakers move to pass bill next month. The Vanguard says burning of Kogi PDP woman leader planned jobs as community. Family members in shock. Fair reprisal attacks to meet weekend. But for illness, Salome might have escaped, says relation. PDP APC demand justice. ABC Nwosu Shunibare others outraged. Our democracy in danger, says Shatima, a YCF leader. All right, so we will stick with the story in the Daily Trust. Of course, it's in most of the headlines this morning. It's about the constituency project, and it says here, lawmakers fire back at Buhari over 1 trillion naira constituency project. Push blame to ministers. That's in the Daily Trust this morning. And of course, we have other newspapers talking about constituency projects. The Blueprint also has that headline this morning. Gentlemen, lawmakers are firing back at the revelation over Buhari saying that the 1 trillion naira constituency project will, over several years, will be investigated according to an ICPC report. Now, what's your take on this?
Let me first say that when sometimes you get vibes from our executive and our legislatures that whatever is obtainable in America, where we copy our democracy, is what we should practice. I'm not sure how often they budget something for their constituency in America. And for me, permit me to use this uncivilized language that is a way of siphoning people's money away.
You think?
It's not about I think, it's I know. Because the first priority, if you go to one of the senators for parliamentarians, is to make laws and do check and balances for the executives. And again, the Constitution has allowed legislators to appropriate, so to say, for the executive. So it's not that you just come up in a day and say they want to do this project, that project, and you just rubber stamp it. So why do you as individuals need to again say you want to have a special project for your area when there is a national budget, when there is a state budget, even when there is local government budget? And these are things that are always open to town hall meetings of states and local government. So for me, I'm happy the person of our that we have at ICPC who is putting fire. You look at a couple of days, a lot of senators of rep are giving back to their constituency under duress. Under duress. So it's obvious now that the problem we have in these countries, our elected legislators, and I keep saying it, there are a lot of wastages we are investing on those 469 guys in the National Assembly. Is that as constituency project? Is that as their allowances? Is that as their SUV vehicles? And what have you? How on earth will somebody, there was a senator from the Niger Delta that had about 117 million and eventually said he was waiting for time to start distributing, I think Senator Manja or thereabout, to distribute the items to the citizens of Niger Delta. On what basis? Now, a state government is planning what to do for its constituency. What happens in having those clashes? What happens in terms of what is priority for the inhabitant? What happens in terms of, even sometimes, they are turning themselves to mini executives by creating budget for themselves.
Will we have constituency projects if the local governments were actually effective in doing their jobs?
Well, it's not a question of whether the local governments are effective or not. I think it's what federalism that we are practicing that is actually responsible for this. Because if we were to actually, practice what federalism is, what would be the whole idea of you, a minister at the national level, becoming an executive officer at your constituency or senatorial district? It's not your job. Your duty is to make laws. The idea of constituency project per se is not a problem if it was factored into the national budget and the executive executes the project. But this question of senators and members of rep doing it themselves, choosing who runs the contract and the rest of it, I think that's where the problem is. There was a time it was revealed that 2 local governments, a project of solar power was executed in the 2 local governments. A particular person was in charge. But I am saying that the entire local government, the two local governments, there is no solar light anywhere except the street of the person. And at the end of the day, over 300 million naira was voted another year for maintenance of what doesn't exist. So when you have this kind of challenges, what the president is saying that over $1 trillion, I don't know how much, but that it was actually wasted, I think is as factual as anything, because you will not get what is commensurate with the amount budgeted for those projects. You will never. So that is what makes it a waste. And in any case, it equally shows too that the executive itself has never been able to carry on well, because you should be able to ask those questions. Is it part of the law?
Okay.
So what?
So now, in all of this now, to what end, if we are to probe this 1 trillion naira, what do we expect to be the outcome?
So what you find out is that anytime the executive is trying to ask legislator what are their roles in financial stuff, the next thing you get is that it is a victimization, dabbling to National Assembly stuff, executive
threats to democracy.
So anytime that happens, so when you ask yourself, any moment the National Assembly is summoning ministers, executive members to come for town hall meetings or for briefing, democracy is not in danger. But the moment the executive says this is not right, that this is not supposed to happen, the National Assembly, you will see that they will start throwing their tantrums. You will see that very soon, but it's good for democracy, it's good for Nigerians, because very soon the National Assembly will start watching the dirty linen of the executive, also in the public, and which is good for us. So to what extent? To the extent that if we're copying federalism, we should copy what federalism is. Like you mentioned, how do Mr. Fashola in Abuja know what I will need in my village and we budgeted for? So instead of us from having it from top down, we should have it from bottom up. So let the local government, who's supposed to form the crux of federalism, take charge of their responsibilities. Then you have a lesser weight on the state, and federal government just ensure that they maintain stability, security, and what have you, and do intervention when necessary. Position whereby it's from Abuja that they will determine what happens in Nguru in Yobe, or they will determine what happens in Malanfatori in Borno State. There is a problem. And don't let us forget as well, some areas that are under siege of Boko Haram, their senators will collecting money for intervention projects. Yeah. The one that is happening that they are flooded in Bayelsa, where there is no single road to cross from local government, their senators will be collecting money for intervention program. These are issues that the executive are laying before CAD. And I keep saying it, very soon, our elected officers will push us to the wall. And when you push a dog to the wall, the dog will come back at you. So if they don't, if we want to copy, let us copyright. Let us do what legislators all over the world are doing. In Africa, legislators are cutting down their cost. In Nigeria, our legislators are increasing their own cost. Everything they are doing is on us. And there is the livelihood in Nigeria keep decreasing every day. Is that 44 or 45? And ask yourself, when other African countries are making gains, what we do is that we just put less than 1% of Nigeria in a particular hall, and we start feeding them, we start giving them money, they start wasting our resources until we get it right. Until we have responsible and responsive parliament and executive, will continue to have leakages like this. And look at AMCON. A lot of things that most of them that are borrowing money in AMCON, they are legislators.
Straight to the papers now, and I begin with the Daily Trust. Lawmakers fire back at Buhari over 1 trillion naira constituency projects, push blame to ministers. And on the front page of the Daily Times, P&ID, we are adopting strategies to quash contract. Federal government opens case against Britain, Nolan. Court overrules defendant's objection to trial. And on the front page of News Direct, Senate to Executive reposition Nuclear Regulatory Authority urges Ministry of Health to launch vaccination program against pneumonia. To the front page of Blueprint now, 1 trillion naira wasted on constituency projects. Reps kick say Buhari misinformed. Ask your ministers, agencies, heads, PDP senators. ICPC's revelations shocking, frightening. On the front page of the Nation newspaper, Buhari's order on 1 trillion naira project jolts senators, reps, constituents demand answers. ICPC's report misleading, says lawmakers. Result transmission tops new electoral bill, also e-voting as lawmakers move to pass the bill next month. We'll be looking at that story shortly. And finally, on the front page of the Vanguard, burning of Kogi PDP woman leader plant job community. Family members in shock, fear reprisal attacks to meet weekend. But for illness, Salome might have escaped relation. PDP, APC demand justice. ABC, Nwosu Shonibare, others outraged. A democracy in danger, says Shatima, AYCF leader. All right, gentlemen, let's look at the move by the Senate for this electoral reform. This issue of electoral reform has been on even before the night Senate, and now they are pushing for it, and hopefully next month the bill will be passed. But top on the agenda of this new electoral reform bill is result transmission. Because the Senate wants the results to be transmitted as soon as the data of any voter is collected, the results are transmitted, and wouldn't want any issues. But this is stemming from the elections in Kogi and Bayelsa State. I mean, did we have to wait for incidents before we have this push to ensure that this electoral reform that has been called for over time is seen to sees the light of day? Bani.
Let me first start from the parliamentarians themselves. I'm aware Nigerian citizens' investment in the parliament for electronic voting has been in place for a couple of years. And I still see that every day the Gavos still have the highs have it. So I begin to wonder if the highs are having it at the Senate and the House of Representatives, and there is no electronic voting. I was wondering what would be their justification for asking for that. Looking at that, putting that aside, the other question we need to ask ourselves is, if you remember the recent election of NBA, yes, the Nigerian lawyers were fighting that they suspect that there is interception of the voting system that is skewed towards the current NBA chairman. Let's go back to Al Gore Bush election in the United States, and that's a very developed democracy. About 900,000 black votes were avoided in place of irregularity or improper voting using electronic means. Recently, the Clinton family and the current president of America, in person of Donald Trump, will still have how the Russia did this, did that.
Yes.
Also, just a couple of weeks ago, the Labour Party in Britain discovered that somebody is interfering with the electronic system and what have you. Now let us come down to Nigeria and localize it. Prior to the election, there is a popular thing in town that says the PDP has accessed the INEC server.
Yes.
That is when we don't even practice so-called electronic voting. And you've asked me, INEC still has to deploy buses, danfos, to move electoral materials, card readers from one location to the other. They have to do reprogramming and what have you. Do we have the infrastructure in place to deploy these things? Somebody began and I said, every part of Nigeria has bank. And I will tell you, I serve in far Borno State. I serve in Mongunu in Borno State. And I will tell you that my local government, there is no bank. So we travel as far as about 3 hours to Kukawa to go and withdraw money. And how do you withdraw? You call the bank manager a month ahead that you are coming. So they will tell you that you come with your slip to be able to make withdrawal and go back to Maiduguri to go and collect that, oh, this copper was paid this amount.
That was years ago, so perhaps change there might be changes.
So what is the change when Boko Haram has now bring down all the mass in Borno State? What is the change that even people in our TVC crew travel to Bayelsa lately to get a 3G service in Bayelsa, the home state of former president, is a problem.
So invariably, we shouldn't even be looking at this.
Ask yourself that sometimes we leak the fake life that everything that happens in Lagos or happens in the center of Abuja is a true replica of Nigeria. Absolutely not. So in terms of how many people are banking in Nigeria, the NCC will give you statistics that you have 150 million SIM cards. I ask yourself, in my office, I know people that have 3 phone numbers. So you ask yourself, are they counted as individuals or they are counted as number of SIM cards? People have SIM card for their data, they have SIM card for their phones, they have all the network. So the question is, let National Assembly first start, give us who is voting ayes and yeas. Let us know which honorable is supporting what my constituency is doing. Then,
invariably, what you're saying, we shouldn't be pushing for this, saying we do not have the structure in place.
Because we'll mess it up.
Really?
We'll mess it. Let me give you an example. Nigerian police, you go and do CECMR. Driver's license, you go and do it. National identification number, you go and do that. Can't we stream BVN? You go and capture.
But Dr. Kerry, we've been calling for electoral reform.
Yes. I think that the time has come for us to embrace e-voting. You know, but that is not to say that it is a one-off arrangement that you just jump at. The process has to be on. Over the years, you know, from the days of Jega, I can't recall what happened before that. The kind of billions will be invested into election. If we do a comprehensive package, we'll be able to put things in place that we support electronic voting. Now, that is not to say that we would just do away with the manual voter as it is. They started by introducing smart card reader. Yeah. All right. That did not rule away the
challenges.
Yes, and it did not even erode the idea of the
manual registration.
So it's a gradual process with time. But let there be a platform. Let there be the foundation. Let that environment be created such that we can begin to work with it. All right. Now, there are places where you can have access to, all the facility to transmit some of this on. There's nothing wrong with it, because when we started with this e-transactions in terms of, banking, they first started with some states.
Yes.
All right? There's nothing wrong with going in segments. But we do know that if you say
remember that this is different. This is election. No, exactly. People can be very sentimental when it comes to that.
You see, that's the point. Now, you look at the budgets we'll be making for election. I said, make a comprehensive arrangement. Put all the facilities in place. All right, because in every place there will be coalition, in every local government.
Yes.
And some of this is, I remember when even this GSM, it was just introduced and it wasn't covering some areas. There were places where people were, buying antenna and the rest of it. All right, just to get service. But today you don't need that antenna. Maybe in some other interior place they are still doing that. So we can start a program like that and begin to look at things from that perspective. That, okay, with time, we'll be able to get to a level where everybody will be able to key into it, because as we speak, we have this impression that everybody has a GSM. No. I listened to one of the reps or senator. It is not true.
It's not everyone.
So, but then a lot of people still have. Like he mentioned, we actually do use Lagos and some of the cities to just conclude that this is what Nigeria is. When you hold your analysis...
But in true sense, that's not what it is.
Far from the truth.
Far
from the reality. But Absolutely. We can begin to work towards it. Because I recall that I said in the last, preparation for the election, INEC gave us the impression that they had a server. So to even say that they don't have is a challenge on its own. All right? They should begin to work towards getting some of these things done. But that you are just going to have, a sudden leap from the manual to electronic, such that everything manual will be ruled out, I'm sure that it will be a very chaotic situation.
I will go straight into the newspapers this morning. The Daily Trust is saying lawmakers fire back at Buhari over 1 trillion naira constituency project, push blame to ministers. The Daily Trust says P&ID we are adopting strategies to quash contracts as federal government opens case against Britain, Nolan, court overrules defendant's objection to trial. We move to the News Direct, where it says Senate to Executive reposition Nuclear Regulatory Authority, urges Minister of Health to launch vaccination program against pneumonia. The Blueprint is saying 1 trillion naira wasted on constituency project. Reps kick say Buhari misinformed. The riders are here saying ask your ministers, agencies, heads, as according to the PDP senators. ICPC's revelations shocking and frightening. That's in the Blueprint newspaper this morning. So we'll also move to the Nation newspaper. Buhari's order on 1 trillion naira project jolts senators, reps, constituents demand answer. ICPC's report misleading, says lawmakers. Daily Sun says result transmission tops new electoral bill, also e-voting as lawmakers move to pass bill next month. The Vanguard here is saying burning of Kogi PDP women leader planned job search community. Family members in shock, fear reprisal attacks to meet weekend. But for illness, Salome might have escaped that relation. PDP, APC demand justice. ABC Nwosu, Shonibare, others outraged. Our democracy in danger, says Shatima. That's according to the AYCF leader. Of course, we will stick with the story in the Daily Sun. Result transmission tops new electoral bill. Also e-voting as lawmakers move to pass bill next month. That's the Daily Sun. Of course, that will be the story we will be looking at this morning. Gentlemen, e-voting is a top priority in the National Assembly. Of course, there's it tops the new electoral bill that will be transmitted now. Lawmakers are also moving to pass bill next month. How important is e-voting to our electoral system?
E-voting, there is no doubt about it that anything electronic is faster, is easier, and there is certain level of proof. But I'm afraid that often at times our lawmakers are Indomie or noodles kind of lawmakers. We do things based on the prayer of time.
Okay.
And I don't want to be seen to be too sentimental about my region. If you look at the last election, you discover that the total turnout of voters in the West, in the South, and in the Southeast is often at times less than 50% of people that has PVC. And I discovered that a state like Yobe, a state like Borno, will always deliver 90% of voters. Even the IDP camps sometimes in those states are more than the total number of votes provided in some states in the West, in the East.
That's for
so some of these laws are sometimes purposely because of the helites in the West or in the Southeast or in the South-South.
Who can sit at home comfortably and vote.
No. That because if you look at our voting pattern, the voting pattern has always been Northwest as the highest block, followed by Northeast, followed by North Central. Now, we have about 5 million registered voters in Lagos, but we have never chunked out more than 1 million votes in Lagos. And you find out that the states like Kaduna will give you remember in 2015, when you have 1.9 million voters in Kano, and when you have about 1.6 million voters in Kaduna, and in Lagos you can only boast about 600,000 voters. Like I said earlier, I said, let us start with the National Assembly. Let the National Assembly stop using the gavel to say the ayes and the hays have it. Once the ayes are voted, you see the pattern of voting. Then you'll be able to say, this popular demand, Honorable so-so-so from so-so constituency, avoided voting, was the part of the voting. Then again, do we have infrastructure that allow us to be able to penetrate these areas? Don't forget, even in some of the elections that we had in 2 states, we still have card reader problem. As we speak, Nigeria has a system, we don't have a central database system. We've had institutions like MBA, Nigeria Society of Engineers, had their election electronic voting.
Yeah.
But what you find out is that the server is either hanging or somebody is tampering with the results. Now, do we have the sophistication to ensure that we protect what comes in and goes into the server?
Okay.
So if we don't have these bases in place, I think it's just putting the cart before the horse, the horse before the cart before the horse. So it is irony of our situation. First, let's get our priority right. Put infrastructure in place. People will say, maybe we have BVN. What is the total number of BVN we have? What's our population?
Bankable Nigerians.
If you go to North, people coming to North, you see them using rubber band to put money on their ties. You see them carry babariga. You saw a video that happened to the Kano State governor where money was coming out inside. So are those people that are the one using card readers? All right.
So let me get from Dan Akiri.
Yeah, I think that we deserve electronic voting, but the facilities are not there. All right? But it must not be mistaken that, or misunderstood, that with electronic voting there will be no electoral fraud. That should not. We shouldn't ever imagine that. Yeah, you know, because you know, here punishment for it. We might not manufacture anything, but we have a way of falsifying everything. You know, look at the issues of Yahoo and the rest of them, so many things. There are people who will, there must always be a way, out of every situation as far as we know. But then, let's try and put the facilities in place. Because when you talk about e-voting, we are still having challenges of electricity. We are still having challenges of different places not being connected and all of that. Now, it goes beyond that. The device with which you are going to do the voting, there are a lot of people who don't even have it. No. So we will have those challenges, but then it is something desirable. Because each time we have election, the way the country is shut down, for me,
will e-voting stop that?
Election is not a do-or-die thing, but the way it is actually administered creates a scenario of a do-or-die thing.
But will e-voting stop that?
It should, because if you can vote from the convenience of your house, for instance, the risk of being killed by, somebody somewhere because you are at a police station where ballot boxes are being snatched will be minimized.
Okay.
That is not to say that there will be no crisis, all right? Because it is still human beings who will manage the system. Now, there's nothing telling us that, because when you talk about computer and all the rest, they are still being operated by human beings. Somebody will still supervise it.
There's still someone at the back end.
Yes, anything can still happen. But then we have the view that it will be minimized.
Okay, so if this have to pass the bill next month, what do you expect INEC to, how do you expect them to handle the bottlenecks, the back end of the whole, so we don't have riggings?
They can't handle it, because at the moment the Nigerian Communication Commission and the Ministry of Information is trying to improve on fiber penetration across the country. Okay. The Ministry of Communication is trying to improve on rural telephoning. And you also understand the difficult terrain we have. Now, don't forget that we have closed the border. So, which means some of the facilities at the borders are the mercy of whatever is available. Then again, if you remember vividly, recently a boy was arrested in Lagos around Idiaraba, who says once they find your SIM card, they use your SIM card to get your BVN and get your details. And like you mentioned, somebody will be behind the database for everybody. So what it means is that you can skew it in favor of, okay, for example, mess up the database for these states. So you find out that somebody that is from Lagos Island 1, his details is put at Amu Ward of him. So when you get to the place, you find out that you cannot vote. Then don't forget again that our last election in 2019, even in Lagos, some messages has to power on generator to ensure that they were able to charge card readers. Card readers are just basic, less than 10 watts equipment that will still require people to borrow generator to power. Now, putting an electronic device in place, security, let's look at it. In terms of, look at states that have recorded like Niger Delta. Yeah. Look at what happened to an INEC star that was traveling over the water and the boat tumbled. A lot of things that are in place that the National Assembly is supposed to put priority. But the problem is that the politician after every election think about the next election. So their priority is next election, not governance, not better life, not infrastructure. What billions we are spending on INEC every year, and we seem not to have the result. So what our advice is that e-voting is good, but we don't have the basics to get e-voting right.
So we have to set
the National Assembly should lead by example, by start e-voting. Let us see who is voting for what and what is they are voting for. And with that, Nigeria will know that, okay, these people are truly genuine. Right. But when the highs, we even have it when the nay has a louder voice. I'm sorry, this is just grabbing the headline as usual for our National Assembly.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us to discuss this issue. You're watching TVC Breakfast, and we are streaming live on YouTube. You can connect with us on Twitter using the hashtag TVC Breakfast.